this video, we'll look at slash chords and how they function, and how to write them into standard sequences. Common in modern jazz charts, slash chords are used as shorthand for more complex chords, their main benefit being to describe extensions and therefore chord-scale relationships in a more concise way. Slash chords are named after the forward slash symbol found here. The top of the equation generally gives you the harmonic content. The bottom of the equation is the root note. When we talk about slash chords in jazz, 99% of the time a slash chord indicates a major triad over a root note. So in this case, B flat over C, a B flat major triad with a C natural as a root note. Let's look at how slash chords work in a bit more detail. Here's another example of a slash chord, D over C. Let's look specifically about how the triad is chosen for the top part of this chord. We know that this means a D major triad with a C in the bass. Let's look and see how this works in relation to our scales and therefore harmony. We'll start with a C major scale, as C is our root note. Then we'll superimpose the D major triad onto the scale. As you can see here, the only note that changes within our original scale is the F natural to an F sharp. Therefore, this scale is a Lydian mode. In this case, the fourth mode of G major, with the D major triad upper structure helping to highlight the extensions, the 9, the sharp 11 and the 13. So D over C is the same as C major 13, sharp 11. We'll look at how we use slash chords in diatonic sequences in a moment, but first we'll look at a few common pitfalls when understanding slash chords. Before we go back to our triadic slash chords again, let's have a look at other chords that contain the slash symbol. However, they are not what jazzers typically call slash chords. First of all, are inversions. These are spelt in a similar manner to slash chords, and confusingly are also constructed of major triad above a bass note. The clue is in the fact I said bass note and not root note. These chords could be understood as traditional first and second inversions of a major chord. 99% of these times, the chords would be major chords, so could be thought of as major 7 or a major 6 chord with either its third or fifth in the bass. Although often the major 7 tends to be omitted or implied rather than an integral part of the chord. However, inversion slash chords can also be used as dominant chords with the 7th omitted too, like in this example, often to give a semitone movement in the bass. We'll look more closely at this kind of harmonic movement in another video when we look at more contemporary jazz harmony. Another commonly misunderstood idea of the triadic slash chord concept is when you encounter a fully spelt out chord with a different bass note, separated with a slash symbol. Here's an example. Often, this can be an indication of a moving bass note, for example when a bass line climbs underneath a turnaround. That said, they can also operate functionally the same as slash chords by simplifying extensions. However, they are not major triads over a bass note as the chord suggests, and for this video we will be leaving them alone. So let's go back to our triadic slash chords. A question often asked is, why use slash chords when you can use normal chord symbols anyway? Well, here's a 2-5-1 with lots of extensions added for harmonic interest. As you can see, it's fairly straightforward to read, but there's a bit of ambiguity as to how the voice leading could be expressed. It could be this. Or this. Or a variety of other options. Watch what happens when we spell out the chords with some nice voice leading in the upper structures. Let's have a look at these voicings. You can see that the upper structure of each chord contains a major triad in first inversion. On the first chord, it's a C major triad. The second chord, it's a D flat major triad. The third chord, it's a D major triad. How does that work with our chord sequence? Let's have a quick look again. Each of these voicings has the correct information. The major thirds in the upper structures allow some really cool voice leading to occur, with each major third rising a semitone to the next chord. Listen to how effective this is against just the bass line. You may be wondering how the major triads were chosen for the upper structure of each slash chord. To understand this, we need to go back to the chord scale relationship from our original sequence. Let's take the original chord sequence and write out the appropriate scales for them. By the way, if you're confused or unsure about chord scale relationships, have a look at the earlier videos on major chord harmony and minor chord harmony. Now we look for major triads in each scale. As you can see, there's a choice of major triads within each scale. Look more closely and you'll see that in the chords that come from major harmony, the D minor 11 and the C major 13 sharp 11, have 3 major triads within them, whereas the chord which comes from melodic minor harmony, the altered chord, only has 2 major triads. Now, we choose the triads for our slash chords, looking for those with smooth voice leading between each chord. You can also see that the individual note from the chosen triads complement the extensions within the chords they come from, so clearly describe the chord's harmonic information. We can now use these major triads to spell out our slash chord. Let's go back to our example and put all this together. Using the major triads we just found, we can respell the original chords as slash chords. They now obviously indicate the major triad movement. We haven't changed the quality of the chord, we've just respelt them as slash chords. Let's listen to this sequence again. Notice how strong the major triads are, bursting through the rest of the harmony. With a new way of spelling the chord nomenclature comes a new way of describing them. Here's the 2-5-1 sequence we just looked at again in slash chords. When describing slash chords, we say the triad note over the bass note. So for the first chord, it's C over D. The other way of describing it is flat 7 over 1. This is how the description works. C is the flattened 7th note in relation to D, therefore flat 7 over 1. So we can finish the sequence by describing the rest of the chords like this: flat 7 over 1, flat 5 over 1, 2 over 1. There can be some confusion about using numbers to describe slash chords, mainly down to the use of the number 1 in every slash chord. The confusion often arises because when we think about this as a diatonic sequence, this chord is chord 2, the next chord is chord 5, and the only chord called 1 in this sequence is here. Try to think of it like this: the numbers on a slash chord are the way of describing the relationship between the top note and bottom note in the current chord, not as part of the sequence. The sequence is still a 2-5-1, whilst the slash chords describe themselves individually. Using the number system to describe slash chords allows us to transpose sequences very easily. We now know that flat 7 over 1 to flat 5 over 1 to 2 over 1 can work with a 2-5-1 sequence, with some nice extensions added. This sequence has a tonal centre of C. If we wanted to do the same sequence in D, for example, we just use the same formula. It's a simple matter of applying the same system on our new tonal center, in this case D. In the next video, we will continue looking at slash chords and look at some common slash chord choices and their application.